Hello, my name's Paul Chatterton and I'm from Our Future Leeds. I've made a short primer 5-minute video just to explain a little bit more about the Leeds carbon budget. And I do this because, as many of you know, Our Future Leeds is part of a citizens-led movement which is trying to create a zero carbon, socially just, livable Leeds by the 2030s. So I want to say a little bit more about what this journey to the 2030s might look like and what are the particular challenges we might face, because given the enormity of the challenge ahead, we have to understand the challenge and calibrate our actions to that challenge. So I've got a little graph and a little set of visualizations I want to go through just to provoke some debate in the city and beyond. So I'm particularly interested for this to be passed around local authority councillors and officers to stimulate debate, especially amongst the Climate Emergency Advisory Committee and those people involved in climate emergency in the city. Okay, so it starts with a graph. We need to understand a little bit about this journey between now and 2030. So all good graphs are labelled. So I put some time along the bottom axis now and into the 2030s, 2040s, 2050s. I haven't done it equally because I want to make a bit of space for some visuals. And along the other side, carbon emissions. We're going to measure carbon emissions along the other side in millions of tons of carbon. Okay, so we've got time and carbon. So right now, Leeds emissions are about 4 million tonnes a year. And they have been coming down. We're doing well, but that's largely about the decarbonisation of the national grid and getting rid of coal nationally. But we're about 4 million tonnes a year. And these figures are a little bit out of date now because we don't have up-to-date annual figures. They're from 2018, 2019, yeah? So 4 million tonnes a year. Keep that in your mind. We emit 4 million tonnes of equivalent CO2 equivalent every year. Okay, so if we continue as we are, that line at the top represents where we would get to. So 4 million tonnes every year, 2019, 2020, 21, right into the 2030. So you can see a line continuing into the future of 4 million tonnes. So therefore, the area below the line, the red area, is the amount of carbon we would emit over that time period if we continue to emit 4 million tonnes a year. Now, if everywhere did this like Leeds, it would be very bad. You know, we would exceed, well above the Paris Agreement of 1.5 degrees. It might be 2, 3, 4 degrees, because of positive feedbacks. So emitting that amount of carbon over the years would be extremely bad. So that's why we need to stop emitting 4 million tonnes of years, because we would exceed safe levels of global warming, which are currently agreed at holding to no more than 1.5 degrees of global warming above pre-industrial levels. Remember, we're now at 1.1 or maybe approaching 1.2 degrees above pre-industrial levels, and we need to take urgent action. So we need to get on a very different line, right? So this other line, this descent line, is how we could get to a safe level by the 2030s, 2040s. So Leeds emits very little carbon, maybe almost 100 zero carbon, zero emissions by the 2030s, 2040s, right? This is a huge task. So that dotted line is the one we need to get onto and not the top straight line, yeah? So therefore, the red area below that curved dotted line is our carbon budget. It's the bit we can use. It's our all-time budget that we can use, the bit left, the bit that we can use to keep within safe levels of global warming. Therefore, the green bit is the bit we can't use. It's our carbon detox. So you can see every year the way that the bit we can't use gets bigger and bigger. And that's the stuff we have to save and do less of or do differently within Leeds, right? So that all-time carbon budget, that's the carbon we can use. For Leeds, that budget is 42 million tonnes, or at least it was in 2018. Remember, if we're using 4 million tonnes, it's already less than 42 million tonnes, yeah? Okay, so it's reducing at 4 million tonnes a year. So we need to radically get on that downward path and really change Leeds, right? So all-time budget, keep that in your mind, 4 million tonnes a year, 42 million tonne budget. And that's just a proportion of the total global budget. You can work that out mathematically. I could send you the details. And it's certainly in the Leeds Climate Commission's roadmap. So remember, at current rate of use, 4 million tonnes a year, we'd use that 42 million tonnes in 10 years. So we'd literally, in 10 years' time, get to a cliff edge where the very day after, poof, we'd have to be able to only use no carbon, because remember, once we've used our carbon, the implication is we're using somebody else's. Bangladesh, Bolivia, Bradford, you name it, we're eating into somebody else's budget. So there's a very, very strong issue of social equality here. So let's just go back to this then. So right now, Leeds' emissions are about 4 million tonnes a year. And we know that we call territorial emissions or production emissions. The emissions that come from the boundaries of Leeds. So it might be driving cars in Leeds, it might be domestic heating in Leeds, heating our homes, and the emissions from space heating, it might be industry and offices within Leeds, what we call production or territorial emissions. Okay, now then, what if we look at this a different way, what we call consumption emissions or footprint emissions, all the emissions which underpin the lifestyle of everyone in and from Leeds. So if we add things like flying and traveling outside Leeds and all the things that come into Leeds, imported into Leeds, actually our annual carbon emissions go up to 11 million tonnes. That's more than double. So it's not just all the driving and all the space heating in Leeds, but it's all the shopping, all the embodied carbon. So everything we have in all the goods and services and all the things like the computer I've got now that come into Leeds that are not made in Leeds, puts our annual carbon emissions up to 11 million tonnes. You have to minus exports, so the things that we make in Leeds and export elsewhere are deducted, but they're very small because we don't make much in Leeds anymore. So if we add flying and shopping onto it, to get our total footprint of as a city, it goes up to 11 million tonnes. So the task becomes really, really different. And this is a fair shares approach because it's people in Leeds flying all over the world or on holiday in different parts and all the goods and services that are brought in from China or Mexico or Bangladesh, right, which underpins what we call a Leeds way of life. So for Leeds, the budget stays the same. It's still 42 million tonnes, but look how much steeper the annual decrease is because we've only still got that 40 million 2 tonnes, but we have to squeeze it into a descent curve to get to zero carbon by the 2030s, 2040s. So the task is much, much harder. That's why it's super important to pull back on flying and pull back on excessive global consumerism, especially importing stuff from other parts of Leeds. So this is a really big wake-up call. I mean, in terms of the challenge we face, we must drive loads less, you know, massively, huge reductions, maybe 50% in vehicle circulation in Leeds, a huge reduction in flying and certainly not expanding Leeds Bradford Airport, a massive reduction in imported goods and reduction in the global economy that we depend upon and in increasing our dependency and well-being on the local economy, yeah, and mass insulation program of all our homes. These are the key 4 things that we really need to focus on. So there's our 42 million tonne budget. You know, the task at hand for councillors, planners, those involved in infrastructure development is absolutely huge. So you could visualize outside the window that big cuboid of 42 million tonnes, right? Once we've used it, we've used it. So the key thing is, here's the key message. Every planning application counts. So if you're sat on a planning committee or making decisions about a particular development or bringing forward a particular scheme, Leeds Bradford Airport, East Leeds Orbital, Otley Ring Road, Relief Road, you name it, every single planning application counts because they represent over their lifetime a block of carbon. They're eating into our budget bit by bit by bit. And we can no longer as a city afford to have high carbon activities and applications getting approved in the city. So that is the huge task at hand. We can absolutely rise to it. We invented the Industrial Revolution here. We can get on course for the Green Industrial Revolution. So this is really part 1 of a primer. I've also done part 2, which is on Our Future Leeds YouTube channel, which is really about where do we go from here and how do we actually change a city in line with this massive challenge. So check out our website. There's my email. Do get in touch and really look forward to more workshops and engaging more with you all. Thanks very much.